Welcome to the Inspired Mind, where we come together to have real talk and offer suggestions for how to thrive in today's environment. Your hosts are a scholar and a gentleman, Ted Baird, the humble and authentic Isidro Iturralde, and that other guy, William Behr.
Well, welcome to Baker Communications Spontaneous Podcast. That's what we're calling this session. And it's really just a roundtable dialogue with some subject matter experts that are living out what we talk about and what we train on every single day in the areas of sales and leadership and management. And so if you were able to attend our most recent webinar on virtual selling skills, you probably recognize these two guys as the voices of expertise and authority. And I say that with all humility in their behalf.
Could be the other guy.
The other guy. So my name is Ted Baird. I have with me today William Behr and Isidro Iturralde, and three guys that are a part of our Baker team here. Honored to get to be a part of it. And just want to say thank you for those of you that were able to attend our webinar last week.
Thank you.
And yeah, it was great time, guys. Terrific response, really overwhelming response, right, William, from what we had planned and what we were hoping for. Obviously connected.
Yeah, I was really, I found myself really humbled by the amount of people that came and that attended and that participated, and the feedback and the response, because for me, that's sort of my calling, right? I consider myself a servant leader. And so to have the opportunity to maybe speak into your lives and help you with something that you might be challenged with, that's my ultimate goal. And so for you to take your time and to give us an opportunity and lend us an ear was fantastic. And so we want to continue to try to support and be of service to you as our greater community. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. And, as we come to you today, that we sort of designed this. This was a result of a couple of ideas that came up. One was looking through the questions that were submitted in the question and answer section and the chat section, and recognizing that we didn't really have time to respond to all of them. So we wanted to come back and just sort of talk them around with, some people that are living it every day. And so that's part of the backdrop of this. The other one is really just saying what we recognize in terms of the way we could bring value to you is we don't hold all the answers, but what we do have is a space for the dialogue and a space for the conversation. That's right. So some of what you may hear us talking about on these podcasts are really designed to stimulate conversation and dialogue with you and your teams. And then also just know that you've got a partner in this conversation to help figure out things that are new to you, or, bounce ideas off from the great list of clients that we get to work with every single day. We're seeing a lot of them come up with their own very creative solutions to some of the challenges that COVID-19 lockdown is handing us, and really spinning up some great opportunities. So we're looking forward to it. And my colleagues and I, we're just here to have a great dialogue, and I'm looking forward to that as well, guys.
Absolutely. It was super fun hanging out with you guys last Friday, and I'm excited about hanging out with you each week. And I'll just start by saying, even though we delivered a session on virtual selling skills, don't get me wrong, I was super scared when this whole thing started and pipeline just started to erode of live workshops that we were already having to deliver for a lot of big customers. It got scary for a little bit, but I think the great thing from a sales perspective is, the cream rises to the top in situations like this. A crisis brings out either the worst or the best in people, or both, right? And so maybe the worst at first, but then the best as you reflect a little bit. And putting your back against the wall gives you an opportunity to think about things, reflect on things, and then sometimes to think about things in a completely different way that you didn't have time to do before because you were just moving. And now you're forced to move in a different direction, which helps you to think about things in a completely different way. And you might be creating opportunities you never would have had the opportunity to create, which I think we find ourselves in some of those positions today. So I think this is super exciting, and I'm excited to talk about it with you all.
I love that analogy, Isidro. Sorry, Ted, I knew you were going to jump in, but I love that analogy of your back up against the wall, because if you think about that from a perspective of what does it mean to have your back up against the wall? Well, if you're floating in space and you try to push on something, you don't have an ability to create a way to move anything, right? You're going to continue to go backwards. And when you think about what causes traction, friction, right? Well, we certainly have a little bit of friction right now in the environment in which we're trying to sell and the places in the space in which we're trying to work. But that idea of if once you get to the place where your back's up against the wall and you decide there's nowhere left to go, I have to move forward. Well, having something behind you to brace you and propel you forward is key. So, I love the idea as a seller of being vulnerable and willing to admit, man, it was scary and we lost a lot of opportunity potentially. But at some point you have to decide, okay, I got to move forward. And how am I going to move forward? And what does my market really look like? And what's my market space? And am I isolated or am I going to expand? I used the phrase the other day, isolation creates desolation. And so, you're not isolated even when you're in isolation. So you have to continue to move forward. I love that analogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this situation is creating a lot of analogies for us. One of the ones that I've been using recently is from a title of a book I read, I don't know, maybe a decade or more ago, Building a Bridge as You Walk on It. And I know a lot of our partners are feeling the same thing. It's like, hey, we've never met with our customers virtually before. We've ever only been a face-to-face kind of business, or we've never delivered the services to our customers in a virtual format. We've always shown up on site for them. So our customers are getting very creative with that process. And you know what? We're all trying to figure it out together. Yeah. And some days it definitely feels like, okay, we have no idea what we're going to do 3 steps from now, but let's focus on what we can do right now. What's the next step?
It's definitely a leap of faith. If you're at home with kids, you're watching movies like Coco and Onward. And in both of those movies, there's that leap of faith, right? Where you're going, like Ted said, okay, you're building the bridge and it's not there yet, but you still have to step out and hope that you're landing and stepping on something that's going to provide you solid ground.
We don't see it right now, but I don't know if you all have seen The Croods or not, but my favorite one is The Croods. I mean, the dad was just keeping them in the cave the whole time. And he's like, I'm trying to keep us alive. And the daughter at one point says, yeah, we want to live, and I think to some extent, sometimes in our business, the things that we're doing them just to keep ourselves alive, but we don't realize that what might be on the other side of that growth is the utopia that they find at the end of the movie, right? Because if they would have never gotten out of that cave, they would have continued that survival mentality of how can I do the bare minimum of going to chase down this bird and stealing an egg from this and, dodging these animals and keeping my family in a cave at night, to being forced to what that utopia is that they find. And then they found a beautiful life. And I think to some extent, we're all searching for that in a way, but it requires us not to be like Grug and have that victim mentality of like, this is a horrible life, I'm trying to keep my family alive, to have that growth mindset. It's okay to be fear, and courage isn't the absence of fear. We all know that. It's how you harness that fear to be able to now create something. And so getting out of that victim mentality into whatever the next thing is.
Yeah, absolutely. Being afraid, but still moving forward, that's courage, and knowing exactly how you're going to move forward.
Right.
So
critical piece. Well, guys, one of the questions that came up in the Q&A last week that we didn't have a time to really deal with in depth, and I wanted to just come back to it. This question comes to us from Katz, and she says, I work in a private healthcare sales, and it's going through a lot of crazy changes in telehealth, dangerous exposure, layoffs, all of that. It's tough to get in front of a doctor or an admin during their typical clinic hours. Now, most doctors don't even want us near their office. Could easily be considered bad taste to ask for virtual meetings right now. What do you advise for folks in healthcare?
Do you mind if I answer this?
No, please take it. Sure.
So as a sales leader, this might be an unpopular position, right? Because we're talking to you about, you've got to find a way to sell through this. But if something feels absolutely wrong to you at this moment in time, like selling to a doctor who's working, to save lives and doesn't really have time to hear what it is that you're trying to do, if it doesn't feel right to you, then don't do it. But what could feel right to you? What do they need? How can you be of service and build a relationship? And so, if you were on the webinar, I talked about this idea about Uber Eats, right? And in this specific community, the community of healthcare, I think what I would do if You know, if I was working for a company and this was my market that I was trying to create connection and relationship and have them think about me, what I would do is I'd reach out and say, look, I know you don't have time and I know you probably don't want to talk to me, and that's okay. I want to schedule a meeting that gets on your calendar that you can accept, that I'm not going to show up to. But what is going to show up is a meal or something. What do you need? You know, can I send you a book? Can I send you something? You know, do you just need the time? Do you need an hour where somebody thinks, hey, I'm in a meeting or I've got something else that I'm doing, where you can just find some place to hole up and have some space and give them that? Yeah. You know, it's not actively selling something, but, you know, selling is about creating relationship and getting people to think about and recognize and know who you are. And if this isn't the time to try to sell your product to them, then at least you can still try to connect with them as a human and be authentic in it. You know, and that becomes the important thing. How can you be authentic and build a relationship and provide them with some space? Because maybe more than anything, that's what they need right now.
Yeah. And I'd like to add, I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think that's something that's really needed. Is we're all trying to find ways to thank the people, whether they're in logistics or transportation or medical or public service. Another thing that's really easy is, so I had our administrative assistant one time send me these easy, it's got our logo on one side, card on the other side. But then I got myself these colored envelopes. And right now that everyone's virtual, the easy thing that you can do to stand out is send somebody a handwritten note. Just say, hey, I just want to thank you for everything that you've done. You know, just send them a handwritten note, just a personal thank you card. And it means so much to get a handwritten personal note from somebody right at this moment in time. And they'll remember that. Super simple, very cost effective. You don't have to really spend more than like $1.50 on this whole thing. And you can send one a week. You can send one a day. I mean, you can just write a list of people and send one a week if you want, and just handwrite it. And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And it supports the United States Postal Service.
That's right. And that's important right now, I mean, especially. You know,
so there's that.
Yeah, there's that for sure. No, it's dead on accurate. I think it's cool too for us to think about, you know, I mean, sales is always a human to human interaction, and those like touch points of humanity, I think, are especially important for us right now. And even the idea, you know, this past week I sent one of our customers just a little short video link, and it was just in this like inspiring and funny and motivational kind of video, just short, couple minutes. I just sent them a mail and said, hey, there's a lot of bad news out there. There's a lot of reason to like frown and be frustrated. Here's 3 minutes of a reason for you to just celebrate the goodness of life. And thanks for all you do. Appreciate your partnership. Thanks for the ways you serve your customers. You know, no ask, no appeal, just a touch point.
Yeah. John Krasinski's Some Good News. I mean, come on, I look forward to that. But he set the bar. Like, he's got to bring it every week. Every week, you know. It's like, you better have some good news, and it better eventually become some great news, because people we're getting judgy, John.
We're looking for it.
Judgy.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's a great piece. If you haven't seen it, you can certainly find it on YouTube. But it'll make you smile and it'll make you cry. And you sourced our team with that, William. So thanks for that. But it's I'm the same. I'm like, when's it coming out? You know, is it time for it? So it's a great piece for us. Hey, guys, another question that sort of came up relative to our webinar last week is, you know, around this idea that, you know, we're seeing a pretty significant shift in some of the selling landscape. And William, I know you addressed a couple of these pieces verbally and also in chat. Not sure it got in front of everybody. I wanted to come back to it because many of our clients right now are experiencing the impact of this shift, and not necessarily in a positive way. We do have a few clients that are out there that are actually on an upswing as a result of the challenges that the world is facing right now. But the question is really, you know, there's two major factors changing in this person's: one, the overall decrease in buying activity, and two, shifting to remote selling without face-to-face contact, which is part of our DNA as a sales team and part of their sales methodology for complex solutions. You know, what are the top 3 ways we can pivot to maximize the impact and keep sales coming in? Big question. A lot of people are facing that right now.
Yeah. So I'll give the abbreviated version of some of the answer that I gave on the webinar, right? And that was the Uber Eats idea. Book a 2-hour meeting. You know, if your customers are used to connecting with you face to face, and they're used to that sort of interaction and having lunch with you, then you're just going to do it in a different environment, right? So figure out where they are, send them an Uber Eats, send them an invite, say it's 2 hours, but the first 30 minutes, 45 minutes, we're going to have lunch together. Pick a restaurant in your locality that's struggling right now, that's on Uber Eats, and I'll send you a meal. If they're not on Uber Eats and you want to go pick it up, let me know. I'll pay the bill. You can pick it up and come home and we'll do it. So that's one, right? That's one thing that you can do right now. The second thing is to don't look at just where you sold before. If we all agree that times are changing, if your territory has the ability to expand, you can't look just at who am I working with today. You have to look at what is the market, the overall market. And maybe you're somebody that can go global. And if you can go global, that while sales are down, your opportunity in marketplace is actually expanding. So how can you capture more of the marketplace than you had previously? That would be number two. And then number three is, you've got to figure out how to do all of this in a new way, with sincerity, with authenticity. And that's a skill that, regardless of what our new normal becomes, will serve you as a seller for the rest of your career. I think it's, Isidro was part of the panel because, he's one of the top sellers in our organization. And I made a post on LinkedIn that said, if you want to see what authentic salesmanship looks like, then you need to connect with Isidro. And that's his customers are customers for life. I mean, they love him for that. So I think those are sort of the three keys to how you can keep this moving. And then, one is, don't just be busy, be productive. What is it that you need to accomplish in a day? Not just how many dials you need to make, not just how many people you need to reach out to, but how many deals do you need to progress? What does it really look like? What is the outcome-based selling that you need to have, not just the activity-based scheduling that you're doing? So I would say that, those are sort of the highlights of what I would look for in how to move through this time that we exist in right now. And then I'm sure Isidro might have something to add.
Yeah.
Isidro, I just wanted to drill down on one of those, and I'd love to hear your response to it, because I do think you do the piece really, really well. You talked a little bit of a webinar about this, but as I, working with a lot of our customers right now, either doing some consulting or training with them, and their sales teams, my son-in-law said to me, hey, we built our whole insurance business face-to-face sales. They're a national company. And so they're trying to find creative ways through this process as well. But I'm hearing from a lot of our customers that are like, how do we make this virtual connection feel like that same kind of human to human personal connection that we've done in other arenas? I think you do a great job of this. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to dive in, Ted. So I appreciate you noticing that. And actually, I was talking to my wife about it, and she even realized, and she's like, 99% of the sales that you make are virtual. You've been selling from home. I mean, you hardly ever travel. I only travel to see customers once in a blue moon, less than once a month, maybe, if that. And other than that, I'm here in this spot selling to my customers. And so I think—
it's only if he doesn't miss his flight.
I
had to interrupt on that one. End up in London, no Isidro.
Yeah,
I did do that, and I won't take all the blame for it, but it did happen.
It did happen.
It did happen. But I think that when people think about it, it's that thought pattern of, I've always done it this way, I need to continue to do it that way, but it's not true. I've sold from home virtually in a remote office, and I've been able to become very successful. You have to put in a routine in place. You have to be authentic. You have to project the energy that you want to get back. You have to be authentic. And it's all part of it. I think people can feel your energy. They can feel your authenticity when you're talking, when you're speaking to them, when you're engaging with them, the way that you follow up with them. I think the number one thing, though, is you have to become very good at how you communicate with people. I think in person-to-person sales, you can get by with being okay at communicating. And that's the scariest thing, I think, for people, is now you have to be extremely good at communicating. Say what you're going to do what you're going to do, say what you did, and then back that up again, right? It's like having a clear agenda, knowing what you want out of every single meeting. And then after that meeting, hey, this is what we went over. These are the next steps and action items. Don't ever leave a meeting without scheduling next appointment or having a follow-up item with that person. And I do that every single time. And that's a big part of my success, is just that effective communication. You'll be surprised how that differentiates you from most other people's. Being authentic, having integrity, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and just communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Hey, Ted, so, you know, Isidro said, use the word authentic, like, 5 or 6 times in there. And I know we've used authentic a lot, and some people might, go, well, what does that mean? And, the important thing is what it means for Ted is different than what it means for me, which is different than what it means for Isidro. But Isidro has a signature, and he just said it as well. It's do the right thing because it's right? Do the right thing because it's right. And so, one thing that I saw that exploded on LinkedIn when everybody got locked down was all of a sudden everybody knew how you should be doing this thing, right? And they wanted to give advice, and that's great. But then there was also the people that we all know they exist, that were like, oh, that doesn't work for me, or this doesn't work for me. You're right, it's not. The thing about advice is that it's not going to resonate for everybody. But unless you give somebody as much as advice as you can, they're not going to be able to pick the things that are going to work for them. So, Isidro's routine, that's not going to work for everybody. Ted's routine, that's not going to work for everybody. What I do, that's not going to work for everybody. You got to find your own routine. If you have a family, it's going to be different than if you're single. I think about my 15 years of working from home, and doing different things from home. When I first started and I had no kids and no family, it looked entirely different than it looks now. I mean, I'm in an office right now with the door locked. It used to be that I was out on the couch with a laptop in my lap. Figure out how to bring you into it, and not the curated you. Yes, if you're the guy that likes to walk around your house all day naked, you can't show up to your meetings like that unless you want to end up on YouTube.
Right.
But, you got to find you, bring your heart, put yourself into it, because that's what people are buying. People want to work with Isidro because Isidro is Isidro on this call, on the next call, when I have dinner with him in his house, when we take his kids and go have lunch. He's Isidro. Like, there's not pretense in that. You know what I mean? It's like, you're not going to run into Isidro somewhere and go, that's not the dude that I see on videos.
True.
And so figure out who you are and how you want to sell and what your authentic self is and what your heart is, and bring that into the business that you do.
Yeah. Really good. Really well said. Well, guys, listen, we got a list of questions here, and I know our plan is to sort of meet together every week. Sometimes we'll meet like we are right now in the middle of the afternoon. Other times it's going to be over coffee in the morning, and to really just sort of kick around some of our own ideas and conversation, and really our own learnings as we walk through this ourselves, and as we walk through this with our customers and partners. And so I'm looking forward to it. So our goal is to sort of put one of these conversations in the airspace about once a week. And I think we're going to have a great time with it. If you've got questions right now, man, just drop them into the comment window. We'll be happy to respond to those from you. And thank you for taking the time to listen. And if you've got great ideas, even on the topics we talked about today that you or your organization have found success with, man, please share them. The world needs people that are willing to share right now. We're certainly seeing that spirit alive in a lot of pockets of the world. Those frontline people, first responders, the medical community, the supply chain providers. We found our first big batch of toilet paper this past week.
Yes.
It felt like a massive win.
I haven't needed any. I don't. Well, whatever.
Well, listen,
that's another conversation.
That's
a
whole different conversation for another day.
For sure. So yeah, thank you guys for leading the front of the idea generation space, and really glad to get to be doing it with both guys. So man, until next time, we'll see you guys on the next webinar, Baker, or right here on our podcast. And if there's anything we can do to partner with you or your organization, please let us know. Guys, enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks,
too.
Ted.
Thank you, Ted. Thank
Been
you,
a
William.
pleasure. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Hey, y'all. We're really honored you chose to listen. Thank you for joining us on the Inspired Mind. Make sure to post your questions in the comments below. We'd love to know what inspires you, and if you like what we're doing, or you think we could do it better. Want to join us or know someone that does? Drop us a line. Until next week, on behalf of Ted and Isidro, this is William, also known as the Servant Leader, saying thank you and be well.